So this morning I was treated to the launch of the Volkswagen Golf GTI by Skype. This is the modern kind of movement that's happening right now. You can imagine how much cheaper it is for a car company to do it, and I guarantee this car company, Volkswagen, would send us to the end of the world for this Golf GTI to actually be driven. So it's not driven. So anything I say today is purely coming from a press release, and I can't guarantee how accurate any of it's going to be. But nonetheless, it looks exciting, but I have to bear in mind, in the back of my mind, that my favorite GTI Golf, the one that's existed most recently, the Golf 7 GTI, is an awesome machine in both GTI and R. So that's always going to be really hard to beat because the last version was just so good. The Golf 6 GTI, it's a bit woolly. Golf 5 was outstanding, absolutely outstanding. Golf 4, we all know the kind of story behind Golf 4 and Golf 3. They were both kind of fat. Golf 2 was a bit wider than the original Golf 1 GTI. And if you can find a Golf 1 GTI, let me know, because I'd really love to drive it. I've driven one years ago, but haven't seen one since. Anyway, let's get down to what we know about the Golf GTI version 8 right now. The Golf GTI has been around since 1976, and they call it the forgery-proof original. What I do like is those drawings. I love that. I've actually got a drawing of that downstairs up to 7. Now 8 is out. I'd love to see the original one. Here's the different models that we're looking at right now. So Golf 8 GTI is the latest version of it. You can see the different sizes in stance. You can actually see how it's grown in width over the years, and how it's getting lower and pointier all the time. 44 years since the Golf 1 GTI. There's a rear end view of the new one with 245 PS. They've sold 2.3 million of them. It's amazingly an amazing car. So that's our first view of it. I'm going to show you a video of it actually driving in a second. So we'll just go through these slides real quick though. The highlights is we're going to have a 7-speed DSG box, which is quite interesting. That's going to be a little bit shift by wire, which is unique to GTI. I've never driven that. I want to see what that's like. I'm quite excited by that idea, that the shift by wire gearbox, because that means technically you can use software to change the gear ratio in a shift by wire, maybe, or at least the way it changes, how sharp the changes are. Anyway, it's going to have a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine, which is plain old standard, no hybrids. They had no interest in talking about hybrids at the conference. The question was asked. There will be a hybrid version of Golf along, and there will be a GTIE, I think it's called, which will be further down the road. We don't have details on that just yet. 180 kilowatt, which is fairly standard, 245 PS, depending on where you're from. 370 newton meters of torque, which is pretty on par with most GTIs. The red brake calipers and things are all going to be there. The IQ Drive travel assist is going to be interesting, up to 210 kilometers an hour, which is basically active cruise control, but called travel assist now. Interior is going to look like the Golf, a standard, but you're going to have a little bit more red here and there. It does look a bit like ID3 as well, or ID3 as I should call it, I suppose, for the audience. You've got to put TRE in the thing in the bottom. 10.25 inch digital cockpit looks kind of nice, actually. I kind of like it. I'm waiting for a drive of this. I've driven the Golf itself. I was at the launch of the car internationally, but no national drive yet, as of yet. It's coming though, it's coming. It's coming. A bit like the Cure for everything else, it's coming. Comfort and dynamics is going to be, it's actually a bit softer. I was looking at one of the slides earlier on as well. It's a bit softer than it used to be, but if you look at this picture for a second, I'm going to show you this car in video doing what it does right now. But in this picture, you can actually see the car drift. Now, that's an interesting thought for a second, because in the video, you can actually see it drift. They do make a point of it. Now, that video might be sped up, but anyway. Okay, so we have a reconfigured wishbone bushing. If anyone knows what it is, leave it in the comment down below. A reconfigured spring and bump stops, same again. Damper hydraulics plus new software application DCC chassis, that's going to be interesting in its own way. Aluminium subframe with optimized rigidity, and it's 3 kilograms lighter. It may not sound like a lot, 3 kilos, but you know, it's a bag of spuds or something that's been pulled out of it, so that's essentially what we're talking about, is the kind of weight. McPherson on the rear as well, again, they're after reconfiguring the springs. Now, reconfiguring means that they haven't changed them from GTI or from Golf 7 even. It means they've reconfigured how they work and how they're operating. So we've got that reliable, I feel in my heart and soul, is going to have that reliable handling that I expect to come from GTI Golf. You can see here that the spring rate, the front axle spring rate is plus 5% for Golf GTI, plus 15% on the spring rate at the back, which means slightly softer ride, ever so slightly. Now 15% on firm isn't much difference in firm. The Germans don't tend to do soft ride very well. Skoda does sometimes in their Superb and stuff, but generally soft is not something the Germans tend to like because they're about high speed. They prefer that Autobahn burn, you know. Here's an interesting little look at the two together, right? So you can see the tire sizes are the same. They've essentially kept the same tires on the Golf 7 GTI Performance and the Golf 8 GTI Performance. The summer tires are talking about Bridgestones, Potenzas, Conti Sports as well. On the newer one, they've gone for Bridgestone throughout. So you've got Potenza, and Turanza, and a Goodyear Eagle and a Hankook Ventus is the other ones on 19. So you've got 3 options of 19-inch tires on it. Worth checking out the price of those, guys. I know I go on about that an awful lot, but seriously, the price of tires can make or break your love affair with a car very quickly. The first year out, when you're going to get a new set of tires, you suddenly cost 400 to 500 quid to replace all 4. Also on the racing tyres, I have Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2. Very solid tyre, very solid output from those. Optimal traction, greater driving pleasure, improved performance. I know that sounds very good, but it's an electronically controlled front transverse differential lock. Going to be an interesting kind of idea, this, because you're talking about being able to have an electronically controlled front axle transverse differential lock. Now that's what we used to call a tricky differential when it came out first on the Golf 7. It is insanely smart for a two-wheel drive car to chuck it into the corner. Now it's become sort of a standard to really throw it into a corner, and that differential makes it feel like you're in a four-wheel drive. It gives you such an element of security in the car. Really good. Sounds like it's going to be standard on a GTI Golf from now on. Progressive steering as well, spontaneous and manageable direct ratio, new software algorithms. There's an algorithm in your car as well. Anyway, so it's going to have direct steering. You won't have to turn the wheel quite so far. So generally, you know, in race terms, you're talking about doing just that. That's it to get around a track. That's all you should have to do anyway, most of these cars. So this is an interesting one as well. I've gone for driver profile. So below comfort, which is maximum decoupling of chassis for greater comfort. Now, decoupling of chassis, don't know what that means really in terms of what the car is going to be capable of doing. Then of course you have comfort. It'll probably default into comfort mode. High steering, which means the steering is going to weight up ever so slightly. Sport then, and then above sport, sporty and very direct. High fun factor, minimum roll, maximum agility. Yeah, so very German, all right. But obviously you've got 4 modes. I'm interested in what the below comfort one is even like and what that does, how that disconnects or softens or what's it doing. Adaptive chassis control is in there as well. Dynamic manager, but really they don't really physically disconnect anything from a chassis. So it's an interesting way of putting it. A dynamic driving manager is another little section to the entire bit. You can see that for yourself on that one. It goes on for a couple of pages, that one. They're talking about a roll damper has been in there as well. A faster response to steering commands. Everything you do in the steering commands can be interesting. Brake pedal, they can adjust that as you're driving. Like the amount of adjustments this car is capable of in mid-flight is what I'm very interested in, and I'm going to show you a video now of that car in mid-flight. I can't guarantee whether this footage is sped up in some way or another to make it look more aggressive than it is. It does look slightly higher frame rate than I would be used to. Like we're not running at 25 or 30 frames there. I think we're running a bit faster. So it's kind of difficult to work out what it is, but there it is. You can see it running through the corners. You can see it really turning in on every single one of them. So Golf 8 versus Golf 7 GTI, you can see there's been a drag reduction to go with it. Reduction of the rear axle lift, which is, it's to do with drag, is how much pressure has been put down and how high you want to make it. It's more of a wedge shaped car now. It's more wedged versus the Golf 7. It looks better than the Golf, the current Golf, especially because they've shaded in the red around the front. The little bar around the front looks really good. That's the in-car driving. I'm going to show you that now in 1 second. Performance comparison between the two, you're talking about 4 seconds knocked off in speed, which is kind of interesting. Not a lot, but when you're in the hands of a race driver, 4 seconds is a lot. Lane changing stuff is there as well. I like it. I like the look of it. Now, there's a lot going on in this GTI Golf. There's a lot happening in the background. ID3, the electrification of the entire fleet. This is non-electric. Nothing at all. This is pure gasoline, turbocharged gasoline engined car, which is kind of an interesting move. I did expect, for whatever reason, I did expect Volkswagen to immediately come out with a hybrid version of the car. I really thought that was going to be on the cars. They'd lead with that GTI hybrid, but instead we've got a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine. Brilliant engine, don't get me wrong, for a second, 180 kilowatt, don't get me wrong on that one. This is a really, really good engine, and GTI engine has been brilliant over all the years. But I just thought that they would do something with torque vectoring or something through a hybrid version at the back. Not in this model of it. Hopefully we'll get to drive it in the next couple of years, next few months, whenever we see it on the road. Whether we drive it here or whether we go to some other country to drive it, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's very hard to sum it up without driving the car. It's very hard to sum up where this is going. I'm excited about what they're doing because Volkswagen tend to nail it. They know what they're at in making driving characteristics good, making performance good, making turbocharging good. They're really good at that sort of stuff. It's what they've done for years now, since Golf GTI 1. And like, they have an ability now to really push it forward. I'm excited to see where they're going to go with the GTI Golf in general, whether it's going to become electrified, whether it's going to become a hybrid, or what are they going to do with it next, because you just don't know with car companies. And we'll see where Volkswagen go from here, but I'm really excited about the GTI Golf. I'd like to drive it. I really would like to drive it on that track as well. It'd be really good. Anyway, thanks again for watching. List of links down below if you want to support this channel. Please do. Hit the Patreon button over there. Patrons get some special stuff now these days. We had a lovely Patreon meeting the other night on Zoom. We all sat in a room and had a lovely little chit chat. It's really good fun. It's really good fun to figure out what everybody wants and try and provide everything I possibly can to them. More documentary stuff on the way. One of them is about the death of diesel, and the other one is who killed the electric engine. So they're both good. Next one is about Tesla, and there's more to come, much more after that. There's currently filming, even though I'm in lockdown, I'm filming some of this stuff. So if you can support the channel in some way, all the links are down below. Even if that means buying something off Amazon that you're going to buy anyway and use an affiliate link to do that, it doesn't really matter. Anything you can, but at very least, subscribe. Please look after yourself. Join me every Sunday for the Sunday service. But until the next time, I will see you on the far side.